Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Hearts of Iron 4, The Last Days of Europe, with me, Alpha Pi Omega, and Empire of Japan. So, in the last episode we ended while looking at the Cold War status, and I realized that we can actually click on our opponents and see what kind of scores they have. So for us, we get 75% from the Malayan Emergency Victory and 0 from the Hawaiian Missile Crisis Stalemate. United States got stalemate for the Hawaiian Missile Crisis and they lost in the Malayan Emergency. And Germany got 200 points from the moon landing, so they're kind of cheating. But yeah, our score is 581 from military, 393 from economy, and we get 75 from victories and 622 from faction. So that puts us on the last place. While Germany has a little bit more from victories and faction, more from military, less from economy, and Germany has, and the United States have way more from military, less from economy, way less from victories, and way more from faction. So yeah, that's the current situation. So we can continue. In the next episode, we're definitely gonna be in 1963. So I'm gonna do the comparison of the sphere, how everyone grew in this year, how the top 10 economies also grew, and how our entire sphere has moved. I'm kind of interested because I'm hoping for really good numbers. I went to the wiki yesterday and I looked that the membership to the sphere is actually giving our allies quite a big boost to the GDP growth, but many of them are translating it partially to us. So yeah, it's gonna really depend on who is doing what and how their lives are treating them. But for our sake, we are doing great. Debt to GDP dropping in real terms and in relative terms, GDP increasing in real terms. Everything is looking good. So we just finished the National Focus Adjusted Budget. The next one we're gonna go with is Wrangle the Governor Generals. In a misguided effort to preserve law and order, some faraway Governor Generals still refuse to sign some crucial paperwork. A combination of honesty, gifts, and more direct means should convince them to do the right thing. So we spent 0.1 billion, so that's what our debt is gonna raise by, but that is really, that's not even 0.1%. And we try to increase security policy effectiveness. After which we're gonna go with the first quarter report. And that one increases our GDP by flat 0.5%, which is 1.3 billion. That's really nice. But our inflation will start increasing by 0.2. That's not great. The glory of the sphere will give us political power and increase maximizing growth. Factory output is going to increase by 5%. That's really good. And production efficiency growth as well. And then the riches continue, which is going to give us a GDP growth increase of 0.75. So the inflation is going to delete the growth bonuses we got from Meet with Investors and the maximizing growth. But the riches continue is going to circumvent that and give us a flat out bonus. So really nice. And what do we have here? Preferential exchange rates. Every new actor in this vast web of conspiracy just has to complain and obstruct every step of the way. The army, the navy, the seafood plan, the governor's office, and now an obscure money-changing financial office in the backstreets of Ginza Ward. It was at least a refreshing change of pace to have some hapless civilians to shout at without any army or navy protection. The bean counters at the exchange office were obligated to cooperate fully. The detectives bulldozed through delays and attempts at misdirection to gain the full list of military currency conversions for the last few years. The employees were left dazed in the wake of the police investigation as cartloads of precious confidential data was brought off to the police station. Preliminary reports did not make it clear why this particular currency exchange was favored. The institution was well regarded, but not the best or biggest in town. The investigation team eventually began to look at the timings of the transaction themselves. A few delays in the currency exchange appeared here and there on the military contract list. By comparing them with arcane reports on the official exchange rate of the military yen, it soon became evident that the conversion to regular yen had always been quite advantageous. The few percent of difference that the office had secured when converting the military contract added up to quite a tidy sum for all the army contractors that agreed to get paid in the military money, especially to their shipping partners in the navy, turning military yen to civilian gold. Okay, so the web of lies is starting to come a little bit more clear. Bill passes in the diet. Whether through luck or efficient planning, our bill has managed to make it past the institution of power. None can question our effectiveness as the legitimate governor of Japan, and our government's reputation has been boosted. So we get political power, bonus for industry, research 2 times 50%, industrial regulations and political parties' effectiveness drop, but our stability increases by 5. And some members of the Diet reassess their support for our government. Okay, so what's next? Okay, no bill in the Diet currently, but yes, the support has dropped. The Kido Itas by about 4%, or actually 3.5, 1.5% for reformists, independent, and technocrats, and about 5% for our own party. So we can spend the 96 political power that we have on reformists, independents, and technocrats. That way we get way more support from them than we had before. And then we're gonna spend on the Kido Itas and on the conservatives, and we'll get a little bit more support. Cool. So every step is gonna be a little bit better than the one before. The public support though is still a little bit low. But we could deal with that if we launched another propaganda campaign. Support in the House of Representatives and public. I would like to have at least 50% public support. That would make me feel safer than the 49% that we have. So you guys are still drilling. So are you guys. Yes, you have a capacity of 40 airplanes. I always forget how to assign the airplanes to the carriers. But do you have just 20 capacity? Isn't that a little too low? Wait. Carrier Air Wings Hakkō. The one that's drilling has a capacity of 40. And you have 20, okay. I guess that's because of the extremely huge amount of airplanes that we're missing. Let's go. No, we have extra carrier fighters. And carrier also support, so it's about just assigning them. I think you do it somewhere like the Air Force screen. Wait, because I think you have to Army sort of. Wait, where's our Navy? Right here. Nope, that is a naval base. So wait, let's look at some. I'll have to. Yeah, okay, here we see it. So we can. Yep, okay, you can do it through here. Okay, so always a little bit complicated for me to figure it out. But we could. I mean, we could effectively assign more right now. 20. No, we need more. We got 60, we need 80. Okay, but so we'll do it fleet by fleet. Crushed underfoot. After the allegations of corruption within the Ino government, student demonstrations had gathered around various locations in Tokyo. Oh god. With the largest group outside of the National Diet Building. They waved placards and wore masks to cover their mouths, whilst chanting slogans and chimes to mock Prime Minister Ino from the streets. Photographers danced around the boundaries of the groups of protesters. The monitoring glare of a camera flash called these moments in time. Umbrellas freckled through the swarm of protesters, lifted in a colorful display of green, whites, and reds. The chants and chatter of the streets was booming and the commotion was shaking. It seemed as if there was little order at all. That was until a horn signaled from the west side of the street, and the attention of the tremendous crowd shifted to the left. A great line of horses stood by the west side opening of the street, backed by ranks of what appeared to be Metropolitan Police. They were fitted in deep navy blue armor satchels with small shields and batons, and other riot control gear to face the protesters. There was a silence for a moment as the protesters turned to face the police, but as the horn veiled again and the horses charged into the thickness of the crowds, screams began to echo from the streets. The blunt force and violence between law authority and the protesters descended onto the streets, and the hundreds of unarmed students dissipated into the surrounding areas to avoid police bludgeoning and arrests. The violence and screams filled the district, only matched by the hiss of water hoses until used to punish the protesters further, and the armor-clad police continued to march past the Diet Building in a regiment-hawking trudge. Okay, so 10% stability goes bye-bye, 20% political power, and public approval decreases. Awesome. I told you guys it's gonna start getting really bad really quickly. So we'll see what more this investigation brings. Our attention 57%. The business partners. A conclusion almost too absurd to be true. The Army and Navy, legendary for their intense rivalry both within Japan and without, are secretive business partners. This is at least the conclusion our data points to. There is simply too much money floating around these two organizations. Some things remain uncertain, of course. Why would the Navy accept to be paid in piles of military yen that ultimately tie them to their hated rivals? And why would the Army try to dissimulate their widespread use of the Navy's commercial ships? The investigation team needs to shift its attention to the Army again. The careful public story it had built was beginning to unravel. Hidden in a chain of military procurement contracts was the strong evidence the investigation needed, but what would be its cost? At the end of another long day of work, Detective Kodaira and Tachi shared a final cigarette before departing home. It had become something of a ritual for the men to share some quiet time at the end of the day to clear their mind. That evening, however, both men could tell the other remained uneasy. The deeper they and their teams descended into the abyss, the more endless it became around them. Both men could only hope that they would live to see light of the other side. The storm brews on the horizon. The 1963 Tohoku winters. Okay. Tohoku had always been one of the hardest hit regions in Japan when it comes to snowfall and winter, but this year, snowfall in the frigid northern region has hit harder than usual. In particular, Aomori Prefecture has received record-breaking snowfalls exceeding 1200 centimeters, with a depth exceeding 150 centimeters. All across Japan, individual charity initiatives, through word-of-mouth, religious organizations as well as political associations, went on a charity offensive, calling for snowfall relief equipment and necessary donations. The prefectural government, for all intents and purposes, seems to be overwhelmed by the natural disaster that had fallen upon Aomori. We've received a barrage of phone calls and telegrams from the prefecture, and the Ministry of Transport and Communications, in charge of Japan's meteorological research, has called upon the Council of the Prime Minister. When snowfall hits, standard excavation and recovery vehicles are used, tractors, snowplows, as well as civilian volunteers who dig through the snow with shovels. This is standard operating procedure for the government. but the central government would take several days to mobilize the proper equipment for the task. Of note, however, is a proposal from Aomori's regional military commander, a call to mobilize the prefecture's reserve units and clear the snow with military hardware, but we should heavily consider the consequences of such a call. Don't be silly. Maybe the boys got a bright idea. I mean, he's got an idea. Let's use the army. The army is not only to serve the civilians in time of war, but also in time of disasters and reliefs. I mean, at least that's the role in my country, so... The green light... Not so different after all. Hold on, we got more production units. Let's put them on here. The good news is that our stability is weekly changing by 0.6 based on the public approval, so that's good. Oh, hold on. Outsourced supply chain, the green light. Okay, so first of all, the green light. Yeah, the Navy is still drawing. A restaurant sits at the street corner, the clashing of pots and the boiling of steam emanating from inside. A small woman firmly gripping her purse enters the restaurant and walks by the counter, staring at the cooks while doing so. She enters the kitchen, wherein one of the cooks collects a wadded-up bill from her hand before ushering her down a ladder, hidden underneath some floorboards. She takes a seat in a circle of chairs, unfurling a book from her bag. A poorly manufactured, poorly kept novel about 1920s America. Under the scratches and tears, the title reads, The Great Cat Big. The book club meeting goes by as it normally does. She sits there, quiet, listening to the others discuss the themes and meanings of Tom Buchanan as a character, or the rosy-colored moving room of page 10 and whatnot. The discussion of the first chapter flies by, all while she stares down at her copy of the book. Are those eyes she can make up out on the cover? Her attention is caught when someone offhandedly mentions the green light in the bay. Well, the translation was unclear, but she was pretty sure the green light sat under the water of the bay. She raises her voice. After thinking about it, I have a guess for what the green light might represent. Looking around, she readies her throat. The green light is both Daisy and the American dream. Gatsby begins his life as a poor man, which is why he can't marry Daisy when he wants to. He works up to a position of wealth, only to find that he still can't marry Daisy. Wealth does not change his heritage or his new money personality. Both Daisy and the American dream lie underneath the water, out of his reach. It represents how the American dream isn't real. The idea that any man can be a parvenu just isn't true. Money can break culture and tradition, even in this American golden age. The book club falls silent. Even though no one says so, they can't help but make connections of the American dream to themselves. They sit here reading shoulder-weight novels in a dingy restaurant basement. The Emperor is the master of Asia. They have formed a Pan-Asian brotherhood of nations across the Pacific, and yet here they are. Where is the glory? Where's the justice? Not so different after all. Outsourced supply chains. It turns out that the army has been outsourcing their supply chains for quite some time. While this has kept costs from spiraling out of control, it represents an unacceptable breach of security and diversion from protocol. We've captured the worst offenders, and they've given us enough intel that we now have a choice to make. We can choose to inspect the supply routes by land, which would involve the private armored car company that has been moving products and payments alike. Alternatively, we can inspect the supply routes by sea, which would require securing a vessel transporting army goods. Which should we inspect? So we can inspect this by land or by sea. Let's inspect it by land. Everything has to move by land eventually, so that might be a safer choice. Okay, 25th of December, very close to 1963. I wonder how Hitler is doing. Avellino regime routed by Philippine counter-coup. Despite the best efforts of the United States to secure a stronghold in the ever-shifting political landscape of the South Pacific, the overextension of America's military presence in the East has seemingly backfired. After failing to counter an insurrection in the Philippines military, the interim government of Jose Avellino and U.S. forces led by Colonel Fertig have been driven off the archipelago by the loyalists under Filipino war hero Ramon Magsaysay. Wait, what, really? Partido Nacionalista. So, with the sphere of American and Japanese influence ever in conflict with each other, this controversy of American strategic politicking is bound to have ramifications in Washington, to say nothing of one of America's oldest allies who may now stand isolated and alone against the Japanese, and all while the future of Philippine democracy hangs in the balance. An open wound can be salted, perhaps a hotline to Manila is in order? So wait, they're talking about this one, right? Free Philippines Republic. So was it the overextension? Was there another one? I mean, none of these... This one is part of the sphere. So that one is ours. And the only one... Free Philippines... Carlos Garcia y Politico Angos. Okay, I'm not sure what the effect is gonna be or where it is, or if it actually just... Nope, it doesn't. Okay, I guess that's a scripted event. The well is finished. The isolated grey machine with its black shadow that coated the icy landscape once stood alone, yet it was eventually joined by a second. The construction did not go quite as well as planned this time. The foundation, thought to be firmly secured to the ground, gave way. The structure buckled under its own weight and tilted into the water before finally coming to a rest, lopsided and halfway in the icy water. Fortunately, the seemingly considerable setback could be resolved with the use of the additional funds from the government. All would soon be restored to working order, apart from that which came at the loss of human life. Oh, is this the... Ah, okay, so that's the Karafuto wells. The lopsided considerable setback would be resolved with it. Okay, all would soon be restored to working order, apart from that which came at the loss of human life. Once the iron frame was properly attached and secured, the mechanism could finally be welded into their proper places. After about a month of delays, the oil rig was finally finished, joining its twin in their much-valued purpose. The icy waters of Karafuto seemed to grow darker as production ramped up. At the same time, the increase in oil production lifted the spirits of Sasakawa and Prime Minister Ino Hiroya. Despite the setback, the additional funding had allowed for another rig to be built. Even more oil would now be available for the government to utilize. Karafuto did eventually benefit from the oil wells. The money from the new industry helped to modernize both the once entirely agricultural economy and the settlement of Karafuto as well. Toyohara developed into a proper town with a matching port. Immigration rose significantly as the oil attracted those who sought to find even more of the precious resource. While the oil fields grew and tarnished the landscape somewhat, the people of Karafuto Prefecture took solace in the precious comforts it had brought them. A close call, but good enough in the end. So we get extra 6 oil production in Karafuto and public approval increases. So now we have what? 24? 29. Okay. So good, that increases the oil production, doesn't it? Trade? Yeah, okay, so we produce now 251 units of oil weekly and import 250, which gives us 4.1 daily gain. And we have currently stockpiled 332k. Really good. And you guys are almost done drilling. You're at trained 2 And I think we're gonna be done within a couple of days, at which point we can start drawing the second fleet. Where are you though? We can actually give you the aircraft. And where's the next nuclear Yamato finished? 1st of February 1963. So you got one, you also got one. Okay, well, at least they're working nicely. The armored car raid. The Fujiwara Sokosha Butsuryu Company, as it is known, presents a peculiarity in a sea of peculiarities. Wow, that's a sentence. Its main office is in the outskirts of Tokyo, but its logistics and manufacturing facilities appear to contain far more paperwork than the head office itself. In fact, so much paperwork has accumulated at the isolated facility that the team decided to raid that the office. Wait, what? At the isolated facility that the team decide to raid that the office takes several days to unpack and organize. Due to their contacts in the sprawling mess of the military, the workers themselves are left untouched, but as warning, nearly the entire office is cleaned. But as a warning, nearly the entire office is cleaned of paperwork, with only a perfunctory comment on bureaucratic standards. Examination of the paperwork quickly reveals the cause. The product and commerce flows monitored by Fujiwara's main and subsidiary offices appear to be almost entirely separate in volume. Just by monitoring the sums of money that are transacted each month, Tachi and Kodaira can tell that something is very, very off in the cash. Very, very off in the cash flow statements. The prices offered and paid are simply too high to pay in a sane market, and some of the organizations buying look suspiciously like those owned by Navy veterans. As with so many other organizations involved in the hunt, evidence is spread over a huge scale, and so scattered it will take days to reach a tentative conclusion. Efforts to organize the data prove almost entirely futile, as the revenue statements are themselves linked to the diverse sub-offices of the Fujiwara firm and shuffled in ways that would make a professional card player vomit. However, after a member of the team threatens to shoot himself on the spot if the team is not given a break from the numbers crunch, Kodaira finds the key to this labyrinthine maze of figures. The locations themselves are exotically arranged. Very exotically arranged. Go on, I'm listening. Okay, so it's 1st of January 1963, and we have just learned that not only is this conspiracy spanning military and naval, but they're probably money laundering billions of yens. I really wonder. This definitely goes back to, what is it called? The Legacy of Rentokuen. Warship revealed the true state of the Japanese military. I'm expecting something like the Russian fumble, where you really think that you've invested and modernized and everything, and now we're going to be left with rotten ships and, empty warehouses. Jesus Christ, this is going to be scary. A directive. With recent research into equipment tests and modernization, the government has asked the IJA to begin conducting tests on new equipment developed in arms factories across the empire. Quotas had to be fulfilled, and adaptation of the Type 120 flamethrower model were in the testing phase, as new weapons were being developed for IJA units across the sphere. However, now that the levels of snow were reaching extraordinary levels, the government had taken interest in using the weapons to combat elements. A soldier from a local garrison in northern Japan had volunteered to test the equipment under the supervision of scientific examiners from Tokyo, and he gallantly sprang into action to play with the destructive weapon. Half a dozen of his squad members cheered him on, whilst the scientist remained silent in anticipation of the weapon's success against targets some distance away. The soldier rolled back his burdened shoulders and took a wide stance, before bracing himself for a fiery inferno spewing out of the equipment. I'm expecting an explosion or something like that. That's gonna be a mess. I can already tell you that. So because it's 1st of January, we can see that debt to GDP dropped to 98.1%. GDP rose to 262.22 billion. They're doing amazing. The debt servicing has dropped to 3.88 billion. Okay, that's not a huge success, but it is still good. And the year in process is increasing to 4.5 billion because the GDP is increasing. We're still in surplus. We're slowly repaying the debt and we're earning more. So this will only snowball. So if we have a 1.7% surplus, we can actually repay this 4.5 billion and the GDP is going to grow by additional nearly 5%, especially after we finish all of these parts of the focus trees. So yeah, by 1964 we should end up with a debt to GDP somewhere around 94%, maybe 95, maybe even less. That's pretty good. So Mighty Atom, that's going to be the last event of this episode, and then we're going to call it an end. And in the next one, we're going to start by analyzing the results of our sphere. I'm going to compare all of these numbers to the ones a year ago, and we're going to see how much we have moved. So Mighty Atom. Every Tuesday, millions of boys and girls across Japan gather in front of television sets in order to peer into another world. The world that they glimpse through those hazy screens is the brighter one, where war is absent and wondrous technologies ease the burdens of mankind. One such technology is robotics, and one such robot is Atom. Mighty Atom is the creation of the master cartoonist Osamu Tezuka, who has been crafting comics starring the boy robot since 1952. Built to replace a scientist's dead son, Atom was discarded by his father and forced to survive on his own. But despite his cruel treatment, and despite his artificial nature, Atom is defined by his kindness and his humanity. Though his heart beats with the awesome power of nuclear energy, he rarely resorts to violence. He lends aid to the distressed and stands up to the wicked. Though the comic had been popular, the show, produced by Tezuka himself, is the first animated television series produced in Japan, and it made Atom known from Nagasaki to Hokkaido. At its height, Mighty Atom was watched by over 40% of the Japanese households that own a television. The Home Ministry has even partnered with Tezuka to translate Mighty Atom for audiences across the sphere so that they can admire this new form of art. But it remains to be seen if the partnership will hold, since Mighty Atom is far from the triumphalist propaganda the ministry tends to produce. Though full of action and adventure, Atom's world is kinder one than our own, one worth striving for. The show is a welcome respite from these trying times. Oh, nice political power. I wonder if this is based on something in our real world. Probably you guys who watch manga or, read it could tell me if Osamu Tezuka is a real person or not. So 15 political power, which will allow us to... Okay, so the House of Cards is dead in your hand. We're gonna soon see a change. And the bill has disappeared. Okay, so that was, I guess, a one-time thing. I thought it would be a reoccurring one, but no. Well, doesn't matter. So we'll see about this new hand. Actually, you know what? Let us end the episode with that, because I would like to see what the new hand is gonna look like. If we get any of these events, we're just gonna read them in the next episode. I'm just interested in seeing what the change is gonna be. So we have 255 MPs now, and when we have it recalculated, we have 243. Okay, so that's not that bad. I don't see the support of technocrats, independents, and reformists drop. Yeah, actually nothing. What about here? Okay, so the House support has dropped, and the public support has dropped, but government stability is still high, so we just need to do a couple of propaganda campaigns, and we'll be fine. And we also need to increase the relations with the Kido-itas and conservatives, and we'll be good. Okay, so thank you very much for joining me. I'll see you in the next episode, and we're gonna start by reviewing 1962 as far as our economy goes. That's gonna be fun. So, see you there.